Welcome to the Madman main event. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the podcast. Today's topic, college football playoffs. With the shakeup we've had over the weekend with a couple of these teams getting beat, I figured it'd be a good topic today to talk about. Right now, we got Alabama number 1, Clemson number 2, Penn State 3, Georgia number 4, Washington number 5, TCU number 6, Wisconsin number 7, Washington State number 8. I really believe there's going to be a shakeup before the season is over with. We're going to talk about that a little later in the podcast. I'll give you my 4 teams who I think will be in. Guys, hit us up on Facebook. Let us know what you think. Tell us who you think is going to be in the college football playoff at the end of the season. Shout at us. Let us know. Talk a little trash if you want to. We might hit you up on the show. But check us out on Facebook at The Madman, and over on our YouTube channel, you can hear the podcast at Madman in the Morning. So today's topic, college football playoffs. Guys, we're going to start by talking about Alabama. Of course, they beat Florida State, first game of the season. But since then, Fresno State, Colorado State, Vandy, Ole Miss we know is in shambles. So not that impressive. Texas A&M, they squeaked out a win there. Alabama's got the toughest part of their schedule coming up later this season. Still got Auburn left on the schedule. Probably going to meet Georgia later this year. So there's a good possibility 1, maybe 2 losses for Alabama if those teams show up. So there's Alabama's schedule. Clemson, they've looked the part so far, but they've also had a couple games that against Louisville. Louisville hasn't impressed to this point, and they've played a couple smaller schools as well. Clemson's still got a tough schedule to go as well. They've got Georgia Tech on the schedule, Florida State, NC State, South Carolina. We know how that is. Big rivalry late in the year. They play the last game of the season, so anything can happen for Clemson. And I think Clemson's going to lose before the season's over with, as well as I do Alabama. Penn State, probably the toughest road to get there. If they can get by Michigan, Ohio State, and Michigan State, which I think they play those guys back to back to back, that could be the run to get them into the playoffs. If they win those 3 games, I think they're a shoe-in to be there. Outside Auburn, Georgia has the easiest path to get to the playoffs this year. With the win and get to the SEC championship, if they can beat Alabama, that should get them into the playoffs, no question. Guys, Washington State play later this year. Washington's number 5, Washington State's number 8. They play later this year. That's probably your Pac-12 champion in my guesstimation. I like Washington State, guys. Y'all have heard me talk about Luke Falk, Mike Leach all year. They've been together. They're like an old married couple. They've been together for a few years, and they got it going. Right now, they're still undefeated. I think Washington State can run out, and they might sneak into this playoff picture. At least they'll be on the outside looking in as we get closer to the playoffs late in the season. Guys, don't forget to check out the Madman on Facebook. Like our page. Follow us all the way to the Super Bowl. We're going to be talking football all year long. Check out our podcast immediately following every show. Our show airs at 9 a.m. on Star 95, Madman in the Morning, every Friday. Check out that show. But again, like us on Facebook. Let us know who you think is going to be in that playoff picture in college football later this year. Let us know what your teams are, who you think is going to win the championship. We're going to do the same. I'm going to give you my picks later in the podcast here. It is time for my DOGG of the week. We're doing it every week. So far, we've had a pretty good run on these dogs. It's been nice to pick out a couple of these teams that we feel like may pull that upset, outright upset. Of course, getting a ton of points in some of these games, and they've covered. But we got our dog of the week. Today, I looked at a couple different games, and I could not make my mind up. So actually today, a treat for everybody, we got 2 DOGGs this week. My first, guys, everybody wrote them off. I know, we threw 5 picks. Jacksonville beat us. Guys, Jacksonville's got the #1 defense in the NFL, and they proved it last Sunday against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, of course, nobody thinks Pittsburgh's going to be able to pull it out this week except for the Madman. My #1 DOGG of the week is the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road getting 4.5, playing the Kansas City Chiefs. Guys, this should be a great, great game. Tune in. Make sure you watch this game. 4:25, I think, is the start time on Sunday. Alex Smith and the gang at home. Pittsburgh rolls in, pulls the upset, wins the game by 4 or 5 points outright, goes back to Pittsburgh, back at the home, and back in the driver's seat for the playoff picture in the AFC North, and giving the Kansas City Chiefs their first loss of the season Sunday afternoon. Guys, tune in and see that game. My second DOGG of the week. As the Big 12 continues to beat each other up, and we know that happens every single year, one wins against another guy, and the Oklahoma State beats Oklahoma, and Oklahoma loses to TCU, or Baylor beats somebody. Guys, it's every year we watch this go on. This year, the same thing's going to happen all the way down to the finish. And my second DOGG of the week this week, after coming off a tough win last week, I think TCU stubs the toe this week. They play Kansas State. They're giving them 7.5. I like Kansas State to pull the outright upset and win the game in the Big 12, knocking TCU out of that top 10 spot at they're number 6 right now. I think Kansas State knocks them out of that top 10 this week, pulls the upset in the Big 12, and now everybody's back in that playoff picture as the Big 12 continues to beat each other up throughout the rest of the season. Tune in and watch that game. Guys, let's get back to this playoff picture this week. We're going to talk about the Final Four. I'm going to give you my Final Four, let you know who I think is going to be in there this year in college football. I believe there's going to be a shakeup. Here's what I think is going to be the top 4 teams in college football this year at the end of the season. I think Penn State will be #1 or #2 in the playoff picture, and I say that for a reason, because we know how they vote. Sometimes they put them in a spot to make the games match up a little better. So Penn State in that #1, #2 spot. We don't know which one. I think Georgia will also be in that #1, #2 spot. So Penn State and Georgia. And the reason I say that, guys, can anybody stop Georgia's running game? They line up every week. You know they're going to run the football. You know they're going to bring it downhill. You know they're not going to throw the ball, and they still can't stop the run. When you do that, that's a playoff team. I don't think Alabama can beat them. I don't think Auburn can beat them. I think Georgia wins the SEC and goes into the playoffs later this year. The same with Penn State. I think they're too good. They're too deep. I think they won't have any trouble with Michigan. I don't think they'll have any trouble with Michigan State. They might struggle a little bit against Ohio State, but I still think they win those 3 games. And I think Penn State goes on and takes that #1 or #2 spot. And here's my shakeup, guys. I think Washington State and Mike Leach, Luke Falk, and the gang out there, Washington State ends up in that spot at 3 or 4 after beating Washington, wins the Pac-12, gets that 3rd or 4th playoff spot after TCU falls out, after Wisconsin falls out, after Georgia wins the SEC and Penn State wins the Big Ten. So I think Washington State takes that third or fourth spot. I do think that Clemson, with the road that they have left, should win the ACC. They should win the ACC championship game. They go on into the playoffs. I think they fall in that third or fourth spot as well. So my four: Penn State, Georgia, Clemson, and Washington State. Not particularly in that order, but I do think those are your four playoff contenders going in later this year. And I think Georgia plays Clemson for the national championship. And, man, would that be a good game to watch. That running team against Clemson's defense, man, that would be an epic battle to see the college football playoffs this year and college championship game this year. And that would put Clemson in it for the third year in a row. So, guys, that's what I think. Hey, guys, it's time for my heartbreaker of the week. The player, the team last week that just broke my heart. Guys, Big Ben. Come on, man. 5 interceptions, 2 run back for touchdowns. Man, you got to pick the game up. You're better than that. I hope you turn it around this week. But my heartbreaker of the week, Big Ben for the Pittsburgh Steelers. What an awful, awful game he played last week. Hopefully, that's the worst game he's ever had since he's been in a Steeler uniform. I hope that he doesn't repeat that effort that he did last week coming up this week when they play the Kansas City Chiefs, since I got them as my D-O-double-G going into Kansas City and pulling that upset. So there's my dog of the week. Anyway, guys, make sure you hit us up on Facebook. Make sure you like our page. Make sure you check out the Madman. Follow us all the way to the Super Bowl. Make sure you check out our YouTube channel. Don't forget, guys, if you missed the show, you can check it out on YouTube. You can listen to the podcast on the YouTube channel. Listen to the podcast on the Facebook at the Madman. All the high school teams back in action. I want to wish all those high school teams an injury-free Friday and Saturday night as you go battle on the football field, guys. And guys, let's make sure we remember all the families in the Vegas situation that happened here a couple weeks ago or last week. Guys, keep everybody in your prayers with all the storms and all the wildfires in California and all these shooting victims out there in Las Vegas. Guys, just keep everybody in your thoughts and prayers. And again, keep all these high school players in your prayers as they play this weekend. Hope they have an injury-free Friday night. Guys, I am the Madman, and I am out.